We are now in session for a special meeting of the School Board of the City of Virginia Beach. The purpose of this special meeting is for the presentation of the superintendent's estimate of needs for fiscal year 2019-2020 and the proposed capital improvement program CIP for fiscal year 2019-20 through fiscal year 2024-25. This is a formal meeting format, and at this time I ask that my colleagues and everyone in attendance please silence their electronic devices and phones. I ask my colleagues to acknowledge their presence on the voting board. Oh, it says your vote has been cast. Mr. McDonald is not with us this evening due to a work obligation. At this time, I'm asking everyone to join me in a moment of silence. Please rise as you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair will entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Mrs. Riggs has made the motion, seconded by Mrs. Rye. The voting board is open. The agenda has been adopted. Dr. Spence, we look forward to your presentation of the superintendent's estimate of needs for fiscal year 2019-2020, followed by the proposal for the capital improvement program for the fiscal year 2019-2020 through fiscal year 2024-25.
Thank you, Chairwoman Anderson, Vice Chair Melnick, and school board members. I am pleased to present the superintendent's estimate of needs for fiscal year 2019-2020 to the school board and to our greater Virginia Beach City Public Schools community. As you know, this document officially catapults us into the budget season, but as you also know, in reality, we've had numerous meaningful conversations between the school board administration about what's needed in order to be successful as a school division, beginning with discussions about budget priorities at the school board's retreat in July of 2018. Our $790 million operating budget encompasses the breadth of needs it takes to run our school system every day. Planning for the next budget both continues to recognize these needs and allows us to look towards the future. In order to continue our momentum and be on the leading edge in our classrooms and address important operational issues, this estimate of needs outlines funding to continue our technology initiative, compensate our staff competitively, and put an emphasis on school safety and behavioral interventions. This budget also allows us to move to the next phase of implementing full-day kindergarten and will help us remain focused on improving special education services. At the same time, we are able to once again reduce our reliance on reversion funds by $1 million, which is an outstanding and appropriately conservative fiscal accomplishment considering how many initiatives we continue to move forward with fidelity. For more than a decade, VBCPS has been recognized as an excellent example of sound budgeting practices in school governance. Our administration, led by my office and the Chief Financial Officer and his award-winning budget and finance staff, works hand in hand with our school board to make critical budgetary decisions, implement cost-saving strategies, and ensure that we're good stewards of this community's investment in our schools. And let me pause just for a moment and acknowledge our budget staff who is here in the back of the room for their hard work on the budget development process. Thank you so much for your work. In this budget, we continue to emphasize instructional needs, capital improvements, and operational excellence because we know those priorities are what matter most to our community And we have done so despite dramatic reductions in state funding a decade ago that have never been fully restored, both in terms of general operational dollars and in terms of capital improvement funds. Related to these challenges, I want to address a compelling and important issue in the decision-making process, and that is teacher compensation. In his amended biennial budget, the governor recommended a 5% salary increase for teachers. In my discussions around our city, I've heard educators and others express support for a 5% salary increase this year, but it's also important to remember that state funding and the required local matching for this increase were intended to be available over the 2-year period encompassed in the biennial budget. In the current year, VBCPS employees received a 2.4% salary increase, and in this estimate of needs, I've also included a 3% increase in the coming year, meaning that our employees will have received a 5.4% increase within the 2-year time frame. In addition, although it will be a joint decision of the City and School Board's Benefits Executive Committee, our Chief Financial Officer and I do not intend to recommend any increases to employee health care costs and premiums in the coming fiscal year. This compensation package, then a 3% salary increase, along with what we project to be no healthcare cost increases for our employees, is good news. Still, this may not be what some had hoped for, and I believe that is at least important to acknowledge. So why 3%? To put it simply, without more revenues available to us, beyond those which have been projected both at the state level and locally, we will not be able to implement a 5% pay increase in the coming year without ignoring any other identified and important needs, and quite frankly, without cuts to some of our most critical existing programs and supports. While we will always strive to pay our employees competitively, I also believe there's a real issue in Virginia which must be addressed. According to recent data compiled by the Virginia Municipal League, instructional pay increases slowed considerably statewide since 2009 when the recession hit, and out of 50 states, Virginia now ranks 32nd in average teacher salaries. Interestingly and importantly, if you take Northern Virginia, which pays considerably more than the rest of the state, out of that calculation, Virginia drops into the bottom 5 states for teacher pay. Of further concern, data compiled by the National Center for Education Statistics points out to a significant national pay gap between teachers and other college graduates, with Virginia having the largest pay gap of any state at nearly 40%. To put that another way, on average, other college graduates in Virginia earn nearly 40% more than our teachers. For context, according to an analysis by the Washington Post in the 1990s, teachers in the majority of states made an above-average salary for college graduates, and today teacher salaries are below average in all but one state, the state of Rhode Island. We must recognize that our ability to recruit and to retain highly effective teachers and our ability to attract, in particular, new teachers to the profession depends on the extent to which we in the state of Virginia are able to remain competitive with teacher compensation. This discussion should be of concern to all of us as we face a growing teacher shortage at the national, state, and local levels. And earlier I mentioned that dramatic reductions in state funding have never been fully restored, and these statistics demonstrate the impact of those decisions. Clearly then, conversations about improving teacher compensation must happen first and foremost at the State House. And to that end, I know the school board continues to make funding at pre-recession levels a legislative priority, and administration will continue to support those efforts. With that said, like you, I do believe we must take every appropriate step to compensate our teachers, so while also understanding and acknowledging the efforts our citizens have made to bear more and more of this burden locally. As you can see in this slide, the burden for funding of our schools has shifted since 2009, when the majority of funding came from state and federal dollars. Today, the majority of funding comes from local dollars. Our community continues to invest in our schools and rightfully expects excellence from our schools. And our employees are the bedrock of that excellence, which deserves to be recognized and rewarded. I am confident that the 3% salary increase proposed here is another step in the right direction. Despite the fiscal challenges I just mentioned, our staff and students have flourished. I am proud to say that all of our schools are accredited for the second year in a row, which is just, of course, the tip of the iceberg, as you know. Our on-time graduation rates continue to climb, hitting a record 93.3% this year, and also we saw our lowest ever dropout rate at 3.8%. Across the board, we've seen gains in advanced placement scores and the number of career certifications earned by our students, and families are moving to Virginia Beach for the school division. And taxpayers are proud to support such a high-achieving system. We don't get these kind of statistics by resting on our laurels. Instead, we work hard to ensure that all students have a welcoming place to learn and rigorous instruction that's personalized to fit their needs. By doing this work every day, amazing things happen. And here are just a few of the many accomplishments this school system and our community can be proud of. VBCPS students earned a record 13,634 industry credentials during the 2017-18 school year. The VBCPS class of 2018 was offered more than $104 million in scholarships, also a record. VBCPS outscored the nation in the overall SAT mean score and mean section scores, and according to the College Board, more VBCPS students from more diverse backgrounds enrolled in AP courses, took a record number of AP exams, and performed better than ever before. Additionally, the Center for Digital Education named VBCPS one of the nation's best digital school districts. The governor and the State Board of Education named VBCPS and 22 of its schools 2018 Virginia Index Performance, or VIP, award winners. The annual awards recognize school divisions and individual schools that exceed state and federal accountability standards and achieve excellence goals. And the School Superintendents Association named VBCPS one of the top 25 school divisions in the nation for its innovative practices around school improvement. Clearly, these accomplishments and so many others are a testament to the great work that goes on in our schools each and every day. When you walk into our schools, you'll see maker spaces and science, technology, engineering, and math labs where students are building and constructing and coding, using the math, science, and technical foundations they learn in the curriculum and applying them in authentic and real-life ways. Students are sitting on yoga balls and benches, couches, and overstuffed chairs as they tap into their creativity, and you'll see students as well working together, learning to collaborate and operate as a team as they solve challenging real-world problems. Our students are leaving the physical classroom and going on immersive field trips thanks to partnerships, for example, with Lynnhaven River Now and the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, where students who have learned about watersheds in their textbooks head out on boats to explore those watersheds and see firsthand the role they play in our local environment. High schoolers at the Advanced Technology Center are learning how to be network engineers and graphic designers and cybersecurity specialists. And students at our Career and Technical Education Center are building houses for our Virginia Beach Education Foundation and studying careers in healthcare and the auto industry, for example. Across the city, students are pursuing dual enrollment, AP, and International Baccalaureate courses that are preparing them for the rigors of college, and they're taking art and music and world languages and theater and history and science and business and language arts and so many other courses that are helping them expand on their interests and explore their passions. These are only some of the literally thousands of amazing learning experiences our students have every day in VBCPS. We are not waiting for our students to find their careers or tap into their college aspirations when they leave us. Instead, we're helping them think about and launch the next stage of their lives while they're with us today. Our strategic plan, Compass to 2020, clearly articulates what it means to be a student in Virginia Beach City Public Schools and steers us in the right direction when it comes to allocating resources in a thoughtful and purposeful way. This estimate of needs further codifies that work and ensures that we are using our funds responsibly and prioritizing initiatives to meet the needs of all children. In this document, you will see an emphasis on all of our strategic priorities: high academic expectations, multiple pathways, social emotional development, and a culture of growth and excellence. However, after hearing loud and clear from our community about the importance of safety and security upgrades in our school, we have put an extra emphasis on social emotional development and safety in this plan. Our Blue Ribbon panel on school safety shared its recommendations with VBCPS and the school board last July, and through this estimate of needs, we propose to continue the implementation of those recommendations. We've added additional behavior intervention specialists, school psychologists, and elementary guidance counselors, and we propose to expand our elementary behavior and social emotional program. We've also allocated nearly $622,000 to expand the Office of Safe Schools in order to meet the increasing needs of our 86 schools and centers and their security personnel. Another priority of this plan is to increase our focus and attention on special education. As a division, we've been actively working to improve our special education program, and we're also grappling with new laws that have further changed the special education landscape. At the end of this month, we will provide the board with an update on our work in this area. That said, we also know this has made the job of our special education administrators and teachers even more critical and complex, which is why this proposal prioritizes giving them more support. In this estimate of needs, we have recommended another program compliance support teacher, as well as 3 additional special education teachers and 4 additional special education teacher assistants. Furthermore, Virginia Beach City Public Schools recognizes the need for ongoing capital improvements. Our community also recognizes the need for these improvements, as our recently completed long-range facilities study confirmed for the board. To that end, the proposed capital improvement plan provides funding to complete the 3 school projects that are currently underway: the modernization of John B. Dye Elementary School and the replacement of both Thorogood Elementary and Princess Anne Middle Schools. There's also funding in the fiscal year 1920 budget to begin planning for the replacement of Princess Anne High School. This project is still not fully funded, as 30% of the funding remains outside of the 6-year CIP window. The same is true for the next replacement project, Betty F. Williams Elementary School in the Bayside 6th grade campus, a project that proposes to accommodate grades 4 through 6 in a model similar to the current Lansdowne Elementary and Middle School campus. This CIP continues to fund infrastructure projects such as roof and HVAC updates, but still falls short of making long-term progress in advancing those earlier mentioned long-range facilities needs. For example, none of the 15 schools identified as the highest priority in our long-range facilities plan are fully funded in this CIP proposal. So while the CIP does address current projects and needs, we must have a serious and a thoughtful dialogue with our city leaders and our community if we are to see real progress in this area in the years to come. Chief Financial Officer Farrell Honziker and I look forward to working with you through this process as you endeavor to now adopt a budget for 2019-20. Moving forward, I look forward to working with the school board, city council, and our greater Virginia Beach community as we leverage this budget to ensure we're meeting the needs of every child every day in Virginia Beach City Public Schools. At this time, I will turn this presentation over to Mr. Honziker, who will provide greater detail about the revenues and expenditures that are outlined in this estimate of needs. Mr. Honziker.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Good evening. Each of you have a copy of the budget document and a copy of the Capital Improvements Program document. This particular slide is a copy of the cover of the budget document. It has a wealth of information, including details of how we balance the budget, various charts and graphs, historical revenue and expenditure budget information, historical enrollment information, staffing standards and guidelines. It also has a chart with our unmet needs, including both technology-related and non-technology related. In addition, there's a section that describes the budgetary basis for all funds, which has a definition and an explanation for each type. These are just a few of the things you will find in the document, and I highly recommend that you read it to help you prepare for your future budget workshops. I should also note that this proposed budget is based on the governor's proposed state budget. As you know, the state budget has not been adopted or approved yet. Both the House and Senate have submitted their budget bills, and both of them are different than the governor's budget bill in a number of ways. We will have to wait until we get the calculation tool from the state VDOE, and that may be in another week. Before, once we have that, we can do our final analysis of what it does for Virginia Beach City Public Schools and how much funding we will receive. So please be patient and stay tuned on that issue. Tonight, we're just presenting to you the budget. You're just getting the documents. So this is just a presentation only. There won't be an opportunity for questions after we finish. And as a reminder, the first budget workshop is scheduled for next Tuesday, February the 12th. And I'll turn the program over now to myself. That was just introducing the budget document. You will find in the first chart here the budget pie, which shows the total amount of all funds. That total is $906.6 million, with the operating funds being the largest piece of the budget at 87.1%. We're one of the largest businesses in Hampton Roads, with the level of funding that we have and the number of full-time equivalent employees, which is over 9,400. This chart shows the breakdown of the school operating fund, which totals $790 million, as Dr. Spence had mentioned to you earlier. As you see here, the local funding is at 50.9%, our largest funding source, the state basic aid along with the state sales tax being the second largest at 46.3%, and the other sources of fund make up the remaining 2.8%. Another way to break down the budget pie is by major category. As you would expect, the instructional slice of the largest is the largest at 75.4%, operations and maintenance at 11.8%, pupil transportation at 5%, technology at 4.5%, and lastly, administration and attendance and health is at 3.3%. It is important to note here that these specific categories are directed and dictated by VDOE, and our accounting chart of accounts is built around these categories for budgeting and reporting purposes. Here's the last pie chart I'll share with you tonight. This chart shows expenditures by type. We are a very labor-intensive business, as you can see. Combining our personnel services or salaries with the fringe benefit costs total just over 84%. The rest of the other pieces equal the 16%, and most of that 16% is non-discretionary. So only a small portion of that 16% allows any discretionary spending, or if you will, any flexibility. The next two slides show our unmet needs. These are not in any priority order, just the highest cost to lowest cost, and a column for what would be one-time needs versus an annual amount need. This slide shows the non-technology needs. And the next slide, this slide shows the technology unmet needs, and this one is shown in a priority order. Both of these unmet needs slides reflect true needs and not a wish list, and we're hopeful that we can eventually fund them. And now I'm going to turn the presentation over to Tony Arnold, our Executive Director of the Office of Facility Services. Tony.
Thanks, Farrell. Good evening, folks. Following up on what Dr. Spence had mentioned, we've got 3 projects that are currently under construction. The modernization of Dye that will finish in early 2020. Thorogood that broke ground earlier this year will finish in the fall of 2020, and Prince Anne Middle School also that started earlier this year that will finish in the fall of 2021. You can see those 3 schools represent an investment just shy of $140 million. So what else is in the superintendent's proposed capital program? You'll see that, again, this program fully funds the 3 projects I just mentioned. As Dr. Spence mentioned, we do about $15 to $20 million every summer in what we call renovations and replacements projects, re-roofing, HVAC equipment replacement, things like that. This capital program also continues to invest in saving energy and improving the built environment. So we've got $15 million of additional funding in energy performance contracts. That brings the Phase 2 funding total to $30 million. This program also completes the funding for the Plaza Annex Office Addition. We built the parking lot in the first phase this past year. We'll break ground on that 50,000 square foot 2-story addition at the back of Plaza later this summer. And that project will involve relocating the professional staff from the Laskin Road Annex over to behind Plaza. We also continue to fund the replacement of playground equipment. This current fiscal year we're in was the first year in quite some time. We've had funding $250,000 a year to start to replace our older playground equipment. We can do about 4 to 5 playgrounds per year at that funding amount. So with as many playgrounds as we've got in this division, you can see that we're going to be at that for quite some time. As Dr. Spence mentioned, the 6-year program funds about 70% of the total cost of the replacement of Prince Anne High School. The balance of the funding is outside the 6-year CIP window. Tentatively, we could start as early as 2023 and finish in 2026. That still remains to be seen. Those dates are tentative depending upon the availability of funding. And finally, the last replacement project in the program, and you'll see $1 million in programming money in year 6 for the replacement of Betty F. Williams in the Bayside 6th grade campus on the Betty F. Williams property in a 4 through 6 combined school. The total CIP funding across the 6-year program, excuse me, including appropriations to date, is about $412 million. The funding in year one, 2019-20, is just under $57 million. The funding source revenue side of the equation, what we've done here is we simply every year slide forward 1 year. I've highlighted in yellow where there are changes in this current program from what was approved in last year's program. You'll see that, again, we're showing funding of about $57 million in fiscal year 19-20. It's interesting to note if you average across these 6 fiscal years, the average funding annually is on the order of about $42 million, which, as Dr. Spence mentioned, is extremely low when compared to what the recommendations that were provided in the long-range facilities plan. And finally, the funding summary. This is where you'll spend the bulk of your time over the course of the next 2 months evaluating the projects. Again, we've highlighted in yellow where there are changes from last year's approved capital program, and you'll see the project at the bottom is the newest project to the program, the Betty F. Williams and Bayside 6th grade campus project. But again, you'll spend the bulk of your time concentrating on this project. We work hard to balance the program against the city funding targets that are established by the city's Office of Budget Development. This program does that. And with that, Madam Chair Lady, we look forward to working with you all over the next couple of months, and I'll turn it back over to Dr. Spence to wrap us up. Thank you all.
So just to bring this to a conclusion in terms of what's next, again, this evening is a presentation of the estimate of needs and the capital improvement program. You have received those documents. I know you'll want to spend some time going through those and understanding what's in there. We will have our first budget workshop next week. The time listed up there is incorrect. It's actually 4 o'clock on the published agenda that you've received, and so we'll start at 4 o'clock based on the last agenda planning session. And so the rest of those times are all TBD based on board input during planning agenda planning. So we will conduct 4 budget workshops with the aim of having you approve a final budget by March the 5th. This is in line with the city schedule that allows us to get the budget documents to the city staff by March the 11th. In April, we will head over for a presentation with City Council on your adopted budget. And again, by May 15th, they would approve that budget and we would be able to move forward with planning for the next fiscal year. So that is the timeline. We do intend to hold a number of budget workshops with you. And again, next week we'll start. As Mr. Honziker mentioned, we likely won't have the calc tools prior to the next budget workshop. I think the information we received today is we can anticipate them perhaps by about February the 13th. So we won't have much more information for you during the first budget workshop about anticipated revenues in terms of looking at the DOE calc tools around that. However, there are a number of budget items that we would want to discuss with you, including full day kindergarten. We'll talk briefly about the Achievable Dream Academy. And then I know that you all will have questions based on what we've talked about tonight that we want to talk about as well. Madam Chairwoman, that completes my presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Spence. As in the past, this presentation is for the board and the public to listen and review the superintendent's estimate of needs and CIP. I ask that my colleagues take the time in the next week to review the information in the budget. And if you have any questions or suggestions, please email them to Dr. Spence, Mr. Honziker, and the entire board before we meet again on February 12th. This will give Dr. Spence and Mr. Honziker a chance to have answers ready for our next budget workshop next Tuesday. Also, by including the entire board with your questions or suggestions, it will keep us all informed and will prevent us from duplicating any questions or suggestions about the budget. And with that, we are adjourned.